All right, I think what Kathy wants to be here for is your presentation, so we might delay that if she hasn't gotten here yet when we get to that, if that's okay. Okay. All right, so please, I will call this finance meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Romano, support by Duge. Questions? Please vote. Motion passes 10-0. Approval of the minutes dated October 30th, 2018. Moved by Sauger, supported by Brown. Please vote. Motion passes 10-0. Public participation. Does anyone wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close public participation, and we're just going to pause on 6 until Kathy gets here. So department recommendations. A 2018 third quarterly report. Director Smigiel.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good to see you again, as always. You have before you the third quarterly report. There's only one thing I want to point out to the Commission, other than the fact that I reported to you about a month ago that the general fund was going to likely experience or report a surplus of a little over $4 million for the year. I've updated those numbers through October, still tracking at that same level, so things are still looking good for the general fund. The other item I'd like to point out, I'm not sure, I might have a different agenda this was printed out for me this morning, but on the first page, it's page 41 in my agenda, but the first page of the expense report, it's XP1. I'm not sure what page it's in on your agenda.
It's on the iPads. They didn't print it up because of the length of it, is my understanding. We withheld that until you...
Right, so what I wanted to point out to the board is there's a large negative over budget number for community mental health. And I don't have very many answers for you at this point in time, but based on conversations that my office has had with Commissioner Kraft and the administration at Mental Health, it appears as if they're going to run a deficit somewhere in the range of $10 to $12 million this year. And that may likely liquidate almost all of their fund balance. So the real question is, what happened and what does it look like going forward in 19? That's more of my concern. I think Commissioner Kraft shares that in terms of what service delivery and all that sort of thing looks like. I just wanted to point that out because it's a large negative number on this report. I just wanted to point it out to everybody. I don't have answers. John Kinch is out of town this week, so.
Okay, and just
it's just more of an put it on your radar kind of a thing.
Just for clarification, we were all provided with the report. It's just they didn't print it up for the table in front of us. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Well, this is probably due to the fact that the state, cut us back, $6 million.
It appears on its surface that revenue did, decline or was reduced, and service levels remain the same. That is a very rudimentary look at it at this point, but we're trying to schedule a meeting with myself, the exec's office, administration from mental health.
Explain to the board, the colleagues may not understand how the board provides money to community mental health. We don't control their whole budget. We provide them a percentage of their budget.
We provide them about $4 million a year in general fund contribution, which on a number of programs, we have a 10% match requirement, and that is the 10% match requirement on various programs. They have about a $200 million budget, though.
But that number is capped, right? that number's capped. I mean, it's not like, because they're running a deficit doesn't mean that's necessarily all our problem, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is of grave concern, and I understand that Commissioner Brown and you were just explaining different ways money's coming in may be cut, but this is budgeted stuff. And if I'm understanding this correctly, and any board member that wants to interject, interrupt me, please feel free to do so. I'm going to digress. About a year ago, and we were asked to put a full faith and credit of reserve from the county because they didn't have X amount of dollars in reserves. So not only did they go through the reserves, my understanding is, that's not there anymore. So that's if there's $12,000, that's a $24,000 deficit. So it's bigger than just dollars and cents because you have to have X amount of dollars in reserves at all time. My understanding is that's gone.
Yeah, if they report a deficit of what we're talking about for 2018, they're still closing their year end, that will liquidate whatever was in that internal service fund or risk reserve fund, plus whatever fund balance they had in their operating fund. There's debate whether or not there's a state requirement or a statutory requirement about the level of dollars that should be in that reserve fund. The state recommends 7.5% of their expenses.
And Madam Chair, and
So
that's
that's
what I
about 15
recall,
million.
they came to the county board and asked us. Does anybody else remember this, or is this just me?
To stay out of the risk corridor.
To put it for the reserves, not that they
Right.
would use it.
It'd be within the risk corridor,
But that was used, correct?
it will be by the end of,
Okay, so that's,
For
if I'm
18.
not mistaken, that's an additional
As I
$4 million.
understand, yeah.
Right, so that's out of the general fund. Now, not only do we do the 10% match of approximately $4,380,000, we out of the general fund, I believe, just about $1 million above and beyond that was chose to take care of some other programs that doesn't have to happen by statute. There's additional funds above that match that was given to community mental health above and beyond the minimum requirement. Okay? I am now befuddled that you're telling us this and community mental health director has not been here. And I would ask to have him come here on our next finance meeting and explain to us where, I don't care who from community mental health comes here, and explain to us, not the finance director, on the problems that they have. Now, some may be controllable, some not controllable. But the reality is, I don't need the finance director telling us that there's gonna be $24 million deficit, and there's no real answers to who, what, when, where, or how. So no disrespect to you, it's not your job.
no, I'm just making you aware of the
I know,
situation.
and it's bigger
'Cause it's on
number.
this quarterly
But it's a
report.
bigger number than that, because the reserves are gone. So this is where I'm really confused, and I need this to be really explained out. So Madam Chair, Crystal, I don't know how we want to get these numbers together and find out when we authorize this money for them to use in reserves. Is around the same time they got extra money, was it a year ago from the state? They got like a $4 million, $5 million, something from the state at the same time, then we ended up putting money in reserves. So this is very concerning, and I think sooner than later, we need to have them come to the finance. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I mean,
Madam
I
Chair.
think your comment about the risk corridor is moving forward, what does that look like? How do they fund it? And all that. I mean, it will be likely gone, and there's enough in there apparently, as far as I know, to cover the problem in 18. But there will be nothing going forward, and that's,
And
how
they-
do you,
and
how
if
do you
they-
build that back up? Or what does that look like in terms of service delivery? I don't know. I'm just surmising my observation, so.
Okay, so at the time that we did that, and there was a whole lot of different things happening, because at first they were running this huge, massive deficit, and then he came back and said things are better, and how did they get better? The money you're talking about, weren't we told it wouldn't be spent because it was for that requirement, correct? And then they spent it.
I don't know, that's what I need to know, 'cause it sounds like they did, it's gone.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, what I'm, conversations with Commissioner Kraft and is more like was with the administration, basically the finance folks. They, again, they don't expect the revenues to cover their expenses
It's a
by
play
10
on
to
words.
12.
They
Yeah.
either spent it or they didn't spend it and expect us to take more money out of the general
Oh,
fund
no,
to
no,
cover.
no, that's, yeah, we didn't have that conversation.
No, but what I'm saying is it's one or the other.
Yeah, it'll come out of the risk corridor, the risk reserve fund, and their fund balance. Going
Okay,
forward, though, is a bigger issue,
well,
or
okay,
potentially a bigger issue. I
right.
don't want to
Because we just,
draw conclusions,
so
but,
my question was, we just passed a budget.
right,
Do those numbers have any meaning in that
At this
department
point,
that we
I-
just passed?
yeah.
I think in that, we have to get to the bottom too as well,
Yeah,
so.
my concern, well, two concerns. One, there's a liquidation of the fund balance. Two, what does it look like going into 19? I'm not sure what the budget, how it was set or developed or.
And whether it's, I don't know if it's Andre's or my committee, I don't care. I think that we need to get it on as soon as possible. So I agree with you on that. Commissioner Kraft?
Yeah, and thank you, Madam Chair. In conversations Steve and I have had the last few days, and CMH board members have been having work groups about the finances and things like that, and we have started to make cuts, but a lot of those cuts aren't going to be realized immediately. So it could be next year, the year after that, because it's when some of these consumers' contracts run out that they just don't get renewed. One of the most recent things we did was respite care cuts. We did, I think it was about 35% in respite care cuts, which is going to save us $5 million, but it's not a $5 million lump sum that we see all of a sudden on October 1. It's realized over the next year, and that's kind of a drop in the bucket. And the $24 million number is accurate. It's not necessarily 12, it's closer to 24 because of the 7.5% we need to have in the ISF. So we're playing with all sorts of numbers here. And we just hired a new executive director. We should have his contract done shortly, so I don't know if you want to bring John in or the CFO, or probably not the new person yet, but I would highly recommend we bring in the new person as soon as he's brought on at the first of the year, just so you can meet him. And I've been having discussions with him personally that he needs to have a better relationship with this board than is currently happening. But I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I don't have all the details, but we've been trying to work through it. I have a giant worksheet here. If we went and cut, or not cut, but we direct everything that we do directly, our services, if we contracted it out, we still wouldn't be covering what we need to be. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me after the meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Duge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask now, actually. How much more is the state cutting us again? Do you have a definite number, or is?
No. And it's all going to be new also with the new governor coming in and hiring new staff at DHHS, because one of the other hits that we got was rebasing for blind, deaf, and things like that. So those changes could be made in the next year also, if, that could give us more money if those changes are made. I'm just not sure if that's going to happen or not.
There have been conversations in and out of Lansing for the last 2 or 3 years that we were promised X and we got Y, and we were always shortchanged. And after everything's said and done, it was cut, correct me if I'm wrong, about $32 million. And I don't, I'm as much in the dark as far as the fund balance. This is the first time I'm hearing about this, so I look forward to conversations with Commissioner Kraft and company. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, is there anybody else on the first round? All right, Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll concur with Commissioner Druze, who just stated that the state's been cutting. And I'll go back to my confusion every time that the director came up, is that they've been cutting because we're performing services that they're not saying that we should be performing, and that's why they're cutting funds. Now, the other counties have not received cuts. They've received increases, but Macomb County keeps getting cuts because we're performing, which again, I'm not that into it to understand, but we're performing services that they're saying we're not supposed to be performing, and that's why they're cutting our funds. So that's enough for now, Madam Chair.
Okay, and my confusion was bad things were coming, and then he came before us and said things are okay, and so that's where my confusion was. The last presentation on this wasn't the dire straits that we thought prior. So I don't see any more speakers. And I didn't get a motion yet, did I? Motion to receive and file. Moved by Carabelli, supported by Gillette. Please vote. Motion passes 11-0, and if you don't mind, Steve, I'm gonna go ahead and let the treasurer come up and give his 6A.
Perfect.
Okay, so treasurer's office payment options, deputy treasurer, Joe Biondo.
Hello, Commissioners. For the record, Joe Biondo, appearing on behalf of the County Treasurer, Larry Rocca. And I thought with the Chair's permission, I'd begin by introducing some key people from the Treasurer's office that we invited up for this presentation. I'll proceed with making a statement as to, I guess, two issues I wanted to address in front of the board, and then just open it up to any questions the commissioners may have. So from J.P. Morgan Chase, we have Chris Asante and Chris Santos. They're, I like to call our relationship partners at J.P. Morgan, and they're here to answer any technical follow-up questions you may have on the executive summary that we included as part of the presentation. From the Treasurer's Office, we have Maureen Alexandrowicz. She's our Tax Collection Administrator. She's the department head for the Tax Reversion Department in the Treasurer's Office. Sitting next to her is Paul Riemann. He is the Tax Collection Administrator in terms of being the department head for the public sector, which includes the cashier's cage in the Treasurer's Office and land file. And we also have Larry Lee from purchasing. Steve Smeagol was here on other issues, but I asked him to also come today, not knowing that he was already slated to appear. We have also Frank Creasure from Corporation Counsel. And all the people I highlighted were people that we talked to and had as a part of our conversation as to what payment options we should offer in the Treasurer's Office. And ultimately, the Treasurer, after hearing the various recommendations from his staff, agreed with the payment options that were expressed in the memo that we sent up to the board. I think big picture, I think it's important to highlight the distinction or why we make the distinction in the Treasurer's Office in terms of payment on taxes, which we consider a debt that we're collecting, versus the services we provide in the Treasurer's Office, which is outlined in the memo. Essentially what this boils down to is us looking at a number of important factors. The first being that we have a legal obligation under state law to collect every penny of delinquent property taxes. We have a public policy goal of doing everything we can to reduce the foreclosure rate in the county. And the memo outlines all the different things we've done to increase the number of payment plans while at the same time dealing with a reduced number of properties going through the tax reversion process. And I think that's a good metric to look at in terms of seeing whether or not what we're trying to accomplish is being achieved. We think it is. We think the numbers back that up. And in this discussion of whether or not to allow credit card payments on delinquent taxes or taxes in general, something we kept coming back to is essentially this idea that we don't want to put people in a worse situation than when they started, when they first came to us. And the reason we highlight that is we're obviously dealing with folks, for whatever reason, are having financial issues. And the last thing we want to do is allow them to trade a debt with the county with a worse debt with a credit card company and see them come back in a couple years and go through the foreclosure process in a way where we can't work out a payment plan because essentially they went through that process the last time around. And it's something that, you know, is something we weighed the pros and cons on. And we're not comfortable proceeding with allowing people to pay on taxes with credit cards without first getting some additional information. So I'll get into what we're going to do with J.P. Morgan as far as rolling out credit card readers in the Treasurer's Office and then later throughout the county. But as a part of that rollout process, what I'd like to do is collect information from the people coming through paying on taxes if they'd be interested in paying with a credit card. When we added the ability to accept credit card payments from people going through the tax foreclosure process who came and met with us at the show cause hearing in January, and by March, where we were looking to see if they had followed through on 3 monthly payments, if they had failed to do that, we still wanted to give them an option to pay with a credit card, we found that in only a limited number of circumstances did people avail themselves of that option. And it wasn't the individuals themselves going through the tax reversion process. It was a mother, a sibling, that kind of context as to who was taking advantage of it. We included the hardship applications for the people coming through the show cause hearing. I believe Commissioner Kleinfeld had asked for that. That's stuff that gets filled out while the taxpayer is coming through the first floor and meeting with our tax collectors to work out a payment plan. Then they come up to meet with either the treasurer or myself, and we review it and essentially make a determination on whether or not they're comfortable with it. Usually when they get to us, it's a question of the payment plan they worked out with the tax collector might be too tough, so we try to rework the numbers in a way where they can afford it. All right, and that's the focus. So when we get to the question of should we add credit card payments on the property taxes, that's what we're facing. We don't want to ever do anything in the treasurer's office that's going to even increase the foreclosure rate for a handful of people. So at this time, we're not comfortable adding that as a payment option. I'd like to survey the public as they come through and are using their credit card readers for services in the treasurer's office to inquire if they even be interested in paying with a credit card on the taxes. And that way, based on the interest that we gauge that way, we have more information to figure out, okay, if we do roll that out as an option, what would that look like? Would it be within a month of it coming over to the county treasurer's office? Do we do it, do we allow people to pay the first year before it becomes forfeited? And then a bigger question-wise on that also is, on the question of letting people pay with credit cards is, again, what impact does this have on the local treasurers? Most local treasurers, if not all of them, allow credit card payment at the local treasurer's office. Is it undermining local policy by allowing people to pay with a credit card here when really we should be encouraging people to pay on time at the local level to minimize essentially the harm to the community and the county, when really that's how we look at it. When people don't pay taxes on time, they're causing a harm. It's our responsibility to essentially make the county or the township or the local unit whole for that missed opportunity by the taxpayer to pay. So that's all the things that went into thinking that certainly at this time we're not ready to proceed with that, but maybe in the future depending on the interest from the public. I know from talking to the staff at the front counter, with the different changes we made in the payment options, the lines have been shorter, people seem to be happy, and I haven't heard any complaints from the general public as far as people demanding the ability to pay with a credit card. But then again, if one person comes to us with an idea like that, that's something we look at. We consider it. We talk with the stakeholders in the office if this makes sense to change public policy, and if not, what additional information we need. So I don't want to beat a dead horse at this point, but that's sort of the thinking behind it. Maybe that's something we do in the future, but right now I would say we don't have enough information from the public as to what they would like to see and how that would impact the delinquent tax revolving fund in terms of the collections coming in. And that is something that takes into account when you're talking about fund balances and the credit worthiness of the county. Every dollar in the DTR fund helps the county look good in that calculation. Stepping away from that issue, big picture, JP Morgan Chase adding credit card readers at the counter in the treasurer's office is going to be something that we think is going to be a good move for the county as a whole. It's really an expansion of what they already do with us. They're just going to help us have physical credit card readers at the front counter. An issue we've had is the cashiers being outdated. I believe they're 20 years old, so we're in the process of going through an RFB, for new cash registers, and the idea would be to get new cash registers as soon as possible in the early year, add credit card readers at the counter so we can accept credit card payments for all services out of the treasurer's office at this time. And then work with JACO, IT department, Steve Smeagol in the finance department to roll this out to all the other county departments. And while I believe we have the authority to kind of order it from on high, that's not the way we're going to approach this. Instead, what we're going to do by working with JP Morgan Chase is offer a more attractive alternative to current solutions that some of the county departments already have. G2G, for example, or Apple Square. What we plan on doing is rolling out credit card readers with JP Morgan Chase that's going to work better for us as a county. and basically allow departments to basically get in line for this new feature as far as a payment option. We're very happy with the conversations we've had with JP Morgan Chase. We think this is going to be a good deal for the county taxpayer. We looked at what Wayne County does with DivDat, another company that essentially specializes in setting up kiosks. That's not a right fit for Macomb County, and we're familiar with what Oakland County does with G2G. So I think this is going to be a good thing for the county. And with that, I'll tie it up here and just open it up to any questions that the commissioners might have.
Okay, before I call on commissioners, let me go ahead and get the motion for receive and file. This is just a receive and file on his report. Commissioner Lucido, support. Commissioner Sauger. Okay, Commissioner Myjack.
Thanks for coming here today, Joe. Really interesting here, some of these numbers from 2016 to 2018 that has here that the lowest number for tax foreclosure properties is this year. What do you and the Treasurer's Office attribute to that, for that reason, exactly?
Sure. If you were done with your question, I think generally we have an improving economy. We have a new administration in the Treasurer's Office where we did redeploy our resources in a way to focus on sort of front-ending the amount of people that come through the Treasurer's Office. So in the past, I think the focus was to try to get as many people in by the end of March, which is sort of the cutoff to work out a payment plan and avoid foreclosure. Instead, we try to do everything we can to promote the show cause hearing in January. This year, it's always the second Tuesday of January, and last year we had 300 plus people. I'm expecting closer to 400 people this time around. And by getting more people to come through the show cause hearing in January, it just makes it easier for us to follow up with the people that just need extra attention to get them to come in and work out payment plans. That gives us the rest of January, February, and March to do that. So I would say that's made a difference. Improving economy, changes in the Treasurer's Office to focus more on making sure people get the help that they get. Our partnership with MSU Extension, what they do for financial counseling for the people that we refer to them, which is everybody that comes through for a payment plan. We ask them to meet with MSU Extension. Nice thing about that is MSU Extension, the folks there help them apply for Step Forward money. For those of you that don't know, Step Forward comes through up to $30,000 where they pay off the taxes provided they qualify. And the great thing about that is by working with MSU Extension, their team, and the taxpayer, that is a vehicle in terms of getting them to pay off their taxes and getting them back on their feet where they don't have to deal with the Treasurer's Office in terms of delinquent taxes, and that's what we're all about.
Wonderful. And I'm just curious, with these payment plans, save properties, tax foreclosed properties, which areas of the county is that at?
Sure. So I can follow up with an email with a complete breakdown, but every year since I've been in this role, the city of Warren has the most, and usually it's the southern end of the city. And luckily, we've been able to maintain a good working relationship with the city of Warren, where they're able to exercise local control by exercising their first right of refusal. That's a relationship that we try to encourage with every local unit. Get involved, buy the properties yourself, and that way you guys can decide as a community what is the best way to essentially rehabilitate the property.
Okay. One other question is, when someone doesn't have the money to pay the taxes, this may seem like a silly question, what's the standard reason for that? They lost a job?
Sure.
Health care, kids' education? I'm just
As you can
curious what
imagine,
those
it's
come out.
all of the above.
All
I
the
mean, we've
above.
had people who, from all walks of life, health issues seem to be a big part of it. Family divorce, family conflict, where somebody, essentially had somebody supporting them, that gets cut off. You'd be surprised at the number of young couples who get married, buy a house, don't realize they have to pay property taxes, and then it becomes delinquent, and they are scrambling to meet with us. But we have sometimes situations where people just don't have the money to pay. They're on disability. I had one lady who was only bringing in $700 a month. And, basically what we did with that person was worked out a minimal monthly payment with the understanding that she was going to try to sell the property. And through the sale of the property, not only pay off the taxes, but get a little bit of whatever equity she could get out of it to transition to a smaller or more affordable place to live. So those are things that we do for people who might not have the income coming in now. We say, okay, we'll do a minimum payment each month, but in the meantime, you have to work as far as showing us that you're gonna sell the property and get into something more affordable. If you can do that, then we'll give you some time to sell the property and hopefully avoid the tax foreclosure.
Wonderful. Thanks for coming here today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
My pleasure.
Commissioner Lucido.
Hi, Mr. Biondo. Thank you for coming. You speak well in front of us. You are very calm and know exactly what to say and how to say it, and I appreciate that.
Appreciate the comment.
We had talked about earlier, when Ms. Toko had brought this up, Commissioner Toko, you had said that other departments were working on getting the same, like kiosk or whatever payment program in place. Are we looking, how far out are we looking for the other departments to be on the same track as you?
Yeah, so ideally, we're gonna hopefully roll this out in early January as far as getting the credit card readers in the treasurer's office. We already had a meeting with the new clerk, and I'm thinking the clerk's office makes sense as far as the next department.
Yeah.
That should get brought on board just because of all the contact they have in terms of providing services. But basically, that's where we're gonna work with the finance director and JACO and over in IT. And what we want to do is roll this out department by department by essentially meeting with each department, making sure we understand their needs, allowing JP Morgan's people to meet with them so that when we add the credit card readers, they're being added as far as the appropriate number of readers, I want to make sure each department has their needs met.
Right.
So that's the conversations we're going to have. I hope to have that meeting with JP Morgan in the clerk's office sometime in January. And each month after that, have a follow-up meeting with JP Morgan in the next department and kind of start establishing a schedule as to when we can add all these credit card readers around the county.
Okay, I like that. Consistency is important.
Yeah, we want to make sure that anything we roll out is done right on the front end, and that way we don't have to worry about anything on the back end.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown.
Question's been answered, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Toko.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, especially at one of my last meetings. Right now, or historically, what has been the policy for the county? Did Treasurer Miller and Treasurer Wabi, did they allow taxes to be paid on a credit card?
So in the memo, just to clarify, prior to, I believe, December 30th of 2016, the only way to pay was by cash check or money order. Mr. Miller, when he was the treasurer, was able to work on and have implemented basically by December 30th of 2016 the ability for people to go online and pay with an e-check. And what Treasurer Rocco was able to do since he's been in office was expand that to include debit card payments. And also we added the ability to accept credit card payments in the treasurer's office for people who came to the show cause hearing, work out a payment plan, for whatever reason did not comply, and we're looking at a tax foreclosure. We gave them one last opportunity to pay with a credit card. So that's sort of the history on payment options on taxes. An online e-check system, December 30th, 2016, we added the debit card feature, the in-office credit card feature. Prior to December 30th, it was just cash check and money order.
So we've never accepted credit card payments for taxes?
Not until Treasurer Rocca added the ability to accept credit cards payments in the office for people that had come to the show cause, entered into a payment plan, failed to substantially comply, which we define in that situation. If we work out a payment plan with you in January and it's March and we're doing the review, we expect people to at least make 1 or 2 monthly payments out of the 3. And for those that had failed to do that, we offered them the opportunity to pay with a credit card. That was something that was only possible under Treasurer Rocca.
Okay. And you touched a little bit on what the other counties are doing. Do the other counties accept taxes by payment of credit card?
So Wayne County does, and they do it through a company called DivDat, where they set up these kiosks around the county in partnership with Rite Aid. Now, the way Wayne County has it worked out is that there's no user fees. So in other words, Wayne County has to essentially pay the burden of that service. And it seems to be something that works really well with Wayne County because they have a population that's diffused throughout the county, and it's difficult for them to get everybody at one central location. here in Macomb County. I don't know if we have the same distribution issue, but certainly I guess we would have a philosophical issue with the idea of using taxpayer monies to essentially subsidize folks who are behind on paying their taxes. In other words, in Wayne County, the county itself bears the cost of the use of these kiosks, and it's my understanding that they have to share a percentage of what they collect with DivDat. In other words, you know, the tax revenue, a percentage of it goes to them. To me, that would be detrimental to the DTR fund here in Macomb County, which I think it's a point of pride. We have a very healthy DTR fund that's able to generate an $8 million surplus for the general fund each year. Wayne County cannot say the same thing, and neither can Oakland County. So I think the differences between us and Wayne and us and Oakland County wouldn't justify having a DivDat sort of set up here.
So right now, are you taking any credit card payments at the window?
So we have the ability to accept credit card payments for people that have failed to comply with their payment plans. The reason we can't take credit card payments at the front counter is because the cashier machines that we have in the front counter are 20 years old, and the credit card readers are not compatible with those. So we're in the process of replacing our cashiers with something more modern that is compatible with our other IT solutions in the office, and that will resolve that issue for us.
Okay. And what does Oakland County do? Do they accept taxes?
My understanding is that they do. I believe they use G2G services, which is something that Oakland County developed, and we have a handful of departments in the county that use G2G. In the previous administrations in the Treasurer's Office, there was a hands-off policy as far as what certain county departments were doing in regards to credit cards. As you can tell by the resolutions I attached, I think that was addressed by the county in 16, basically saying that as a matter of public policy, it probably makes sense for everybody to be on one system. And I know the finance director would agree with that, along with JACO as well.
What I'm asking is, do our surrounding counties accept credit card payments for taxes?
The answer is yes.
Oakland and Wayne?
That's my understanding,
And
yes.
St. Clair?
I'd have to double check on St. Clair.
Okay. I mean, I disagree with obviously, I mean, I've been complaining about it for a while, that I don't think that our treasurers should be in the business of credit counseling, and I think that if people want to pay with a credit card, they should be able to pay with a credit card. And that's my 2 cents on it. Thank you.
Thank you. So in your memo in the first paragraph, you talked about the services that were not set up with the e-check and debit. You know, there were the, what you referred to them as consider services that you have considerably to a lesser extent.
Yes.
Those are the ones you're talking about. In 2019, you're going to roll out an ability for them to pay through credit card, correct?
In the treasurer's office, yes.
In the treasurer's office. And then with respect to the taxes, though, they will not, what you're rolling out in 2019 will not be available to them, the ones that are foreclosed on, until they reach that last stage where they've been to the show cause hearing and they have not followed up on the payment plan, correct? They will still not be able to show up with what you're rolling out in 2019.
You're correct. If the statement is, are we allowing credit card payments on taxes at this time, the answer is no. I think it's important to collect some information from the taxpayers first as to what interest level there is, so that we can figure out, if we do allow people to pay with credit cards, what time frame of that 3-year process should we allow them to pay? So it's still being looked at.
Well, the reason I asked is the way that it was written when you were talking about what you're rolling out in 19 with the credit readers and everything. You didn't distinguish that it wasn't going to be for taxes, but that's what I'm getting today. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
It will be for a limited. It'll be for a specific number of things at the counter that you can, but there will be other things at the counter that you still can't. And I'm not passing judgment. I'm just defining what you.
Right. As far
Okay.
as credit card payments, they will be for services in the treasurer's office.
Okay. So my question, Steve, is. The clerk's office has, I think they have contracts. Do they have contracts with other entities dealing with how they take payments with credit cards
I
and
don't
things?
know. they've used PayPal in the past, they've used Square. I'm not sure they're using G2G, but
Wait.
they've used multiples, and it clearly would be beneficial to have one system, one interface, and things of that nature.
I'm curious about contracts because, commissioners, if you remember Clerk Sapal coming like 4 or 5 years ago on setting up, and she had a whole pay structure that she wanted to charge people, and it had to do with how the company would be paid. So there may be some contracts out there. Could you just,
Yeah, I think I'll work with Joe, and it may have the same situation with Oakland County and G2G. I don't know. I have to look into that.
okay, that was my biggest question was, I know that the clerk's office is doing it now, and they're using some method that, you know, there might be an issue, so.
Something that I think might be responsive is this, from our point of view, whatever contracts that certain departments might be already involved with, we would simply wait out the term of the contract if there is a term, and then bring them onto accounting on the same system as everybody else.
And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what's going on at this point in the clerk's office, because when Carmela left and Karen came in, didn't she want to go to the physical paper thing because she didn't trust computers and the computer swipe? So I don't even know where they are at this point. But they know that you're heading in this direction, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been looking through the attachments, and forgive me if you've said this already, but is there a processing fee? And if there is, does that get passed along to the customer?
Yeah, so basically, there would be no cost that would be borne by the county. It would all be placed on the user. And basically what'll happen is it'll reflect, as far as the ACH and stuff like that, what we already have in place. For example, ACH would be $1 fee for that. I think for credit cards, it's 2.5%.
Okay.
So, all within, I think, reasonable numbers compared to what's out there.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I don't see any other speakers. So with that, there's a motion to receive and file. Please vote. Motion passes 10-0. Kathy got here. Who disappeared? Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, next, so we have item 7B, budget amendment. Do we want to do all three of these together, B, C, and D? And
E
E,
and F.
right?
And F.
And F.
There's 5 of them.
Okay, so,
I think they're fairly self-explanatory.
okay, so I'll seek a motion for B through F. Moved by Romano, supported by Duge. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, and try not to at least. A lot of this is going to sound repetitive. We are getting money. Anyway, I've mentioned this numerous times in the last couple of months. Each one of these items, item A or item B, increase in interest revenue. The treasurer has changed the mix of the investment portfolio since he's taken office a couple of years ago. And as you know, interest rates have risen over the last year as well, so our yields are higher than expected, so revenues for interest are trending toward about $1 million this year. The budget's $700,000. I think in 2017, the actual revenue was about $775,000 for revenue. So seeking a budget adjustment to increase interest revenue by $700,000. We've also budgeted $1 million or $600,000 for 2019, just to be on the conservative side. Item C, we've talked about this, property tax increase. Property taxes are coming in at 3.5% increase. We budgeted a 2.5% increase. That 1% difference is just shy of about $1.2 million. So that's that particular item. Again, we budgeted another 3.5% increase for 2019 as well. The state just came through and issued their memo every year on what the inflationary component of the property tax increase for next year is. It was 2.4. So to get to the 3.5, we need another 1.1% roughly increase in new construction, so on and so forth. So again, I think that's fairly attainable for next year. So that particular item. The next item is real estate transfer tax. There's a schedule attached with this particular agenda item. We currently budget about $3 million for real estate transfer tax. It's trending toward 4.6 million for this year through October. So you can see in 2017, the actual was 4.5 or just shy of 4.5. So requesting an increase in revenues by 1.6 million. We budgeted 4 million in 2019. Next item, we've budgeted about $4 million for personal property tax reimbursement from the state. We got 8 million 2 years ago, 7 million a year ago, expecting about 6 million this year. So there's a $2 million increase in that particular item. And then the last item is actually a decrease in expenses related to a transfer to the debt service fund, which we won't need because we didn't issue the capital projects bonds. So that's about $1.5 million, or is $1.5 million. There's one item I didn't get on this agenda that I'll be bringing to you in December, at the December 12th meeting, which is to increase overtime at the sheriff's department. I talked about that when I did the forecast about a month ago. I just didn't get it on the agenda, waiting to kind of see where we're trending. I think it's going to be about $1 million, $1.1 million adjustment in overtime expense. But all of these items were factored into the forecast that I presented to you about a month ago. So,
Commissioner Carabell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, Steve, I just got a question. Madam Chair, they're requesting right now budget adjustments for the 2018 budget. And I want to make sure that I'm clear and I'm understanding. The wording that you have on all of them, it looks like a sentence is missing, and I'm just trying to get my arms around it. For example, when I go to read one of them, it basically says, the above budget amendment in the general fund in the amount of X is to increase, for example, the real estate transfer tax revenues to projected actual for the fiscal year ending in 2013-2018. The amendment will increase real estate transfer tax revenue and decrease utilization of fund balance in the general fund. Each one of them says increasing those funds coming in, which I understand, and decreasing the funds going out. But the sentence that's missing is increasing the general fund. And what are we building it up to?
The line item that says decrease utilization of fund balance is exactly what is happening there. It's going to increase the fund balance.
Well, I understand, again, I'm a slow guy, right? When you say you're increasing the revenues and you're decreasing what you're spending out, that means I'm leaving more into the kitty.
It is, but the utilization of fund balance is a revenue line item to balance the budget. And so right now,
This should be, and I'm asking, this is where I'm a little confused. This should be adding additional funds to the general fund reserves.
It absolutely will.
But it doesn't say that, number one, just bear with me. Again, maybe it does and I just don't understand it. But I'd like to see a dollar figure. So if it says we have X amount of dollars, now we're at this amount because we've increased this much of the reserves. You see what I'm saying? I don't know what that number is.
Are you asking for a total of the 5 of these?
What I'm saying is that if you total these all up, we may be adding $4 million into additional funds into the general fund, hypothetically, if that's the number, if they totaled all up. So if our general fund.
It's somewhere around $5 million. If I
Okay,
added them
$4
up.
million, I was off.
Yeah.
So if you're adding $5 million more, you anticipated the general fund to be at what in reserves?
That's what they determined.
Yeah, if you look at the forecast,
Okay.
I
and the
can't,
forecast- Okay, and my point is that the forecast, you thought it was gonna be this, now we got more money in. So now that's a bigger pot. I guess when we do these things, I'd like to know how that pot's growing.
well, by each iteration of this, actually, I mean,
Wait, I might be able to clarify what he's asking. Isn't all of this sort of a result of all the discussion at the very end of budget and that
No, these are the numbers that are finally coming in.
yeah, this is for 2018.
No, these are numbers that he was guessing? Okay, scientific, I mean, as well as you could get, you're anticipating what you think it may be conservatively.
Right.
Now, the real numbers are here, we're adjusting accordingly.
For 18.
For
Correct.
18, which changes what you're carrying into 19. So I'm just, again, I would like to know that we're increasing that general fund budget, and how much are we increasing it to going into 19? That's, I'm just, maybe it's the wrong, I'm not asking it the right way, but
Yeah, I guess what you're asking is, what is
Exactly.
the, yeah, you're
And
gonna,
that's-
you're increasing fund balance by the total of all these amounts, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million.
do you understand what I'm trying to
Yeah,
ask?
so if you, I can provide it again, if you look back at the forecast that I provided, it'll show all these moves. And I'm more than happy to talk
Right,
about
but then
that
it's
again
gonna say,
at the
my
next
bottom
finance.
line, as after this full board, we're gonna have a general fund increase of X, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's gonna be about.
And that's where I think we
Yeah, it's
should,
gonna be
we
an
should
increase
always
of about
have that in
4.3
front of us
million.
as we're making these decisions going forward. I'm sorry, that's all
Yeah.
I want clarification. Thank you. Thank you, madam.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Myjack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Steve, just a question, the personal property tax reimbursement revenue, does that relate to the ballot proposal for the PPT elimination? Okay, so my next question to you then, with these numbers that you had, 8 million for 2016, 7 million for 2017, and 6 million for 2018 and 2019 each, where does that make us? Does that make the county whole from that elimination? Again, I ask this because of the unfair, I'm always watchful and cautious of what the state does, and, you know.
I think it always depends on how much in exemptions are filed as well. I think a lot of this excess is coming from, or a lot of this revenue is coming because there's excess in the use tax fund. I can't remember the official name of it, but, because the economy is doing so well, that we're getting excess, so.
Let me ask you this question then. What would not make us whole on this? Would it be a $0 amount or a positive dollar amount? You'd have to look into that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know where I'm coming from
Yeah, I
with
know where
this.
you're coming
I am
from.
very
Yep.
cautious of what the state
Absolutely,
does.
yep.
The loss of revenue sharing over the years and this personal
I think,
property
you know,
tax.
Commissioner Kleinfeld's mentioned in the past, I think there's some legislation trying to move its way through
Right.
Lansing about restructuring that, and we're keeping our eyes on that. We really don't know what's
So
going on
we just want to keep
there.
our eyes on it and be cautious and
Yeah.
mindful of that.
Yep.
So, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Don't we usually, we do the budget amendments on the expenses? The revenues, if they come in higher, they just come in higher, and the budget is what it is at the end. We don't usually at the end of the year.
These are such large adjustments, and I've flowed those through into the budget for next year. I'm doing it from a consistency perspective.
Right, and I
Because they're so
thought-
big, so they're so large.
Okay, I thought this was unusual, and I thought
Generally,
it
we
also
don't.
may have been related to, we were gonna, we were gonna cut from the capital projects. We didn't do that, and I read it like this, okay? He's actually showing us here by having actual budget amendments. Here's what I said I thought was coming in. Is there
Correct.
some truth to that? Okay.
Yeah, and
That's what I thought, because we don't usually do this.
No, if a line item's gonna be over by 50,000 or 100,000 or something, that usually don't do that. It is what it is. These are such large numbers, and for consistency purposes, particularly next year, when we get into the conversation of how much is revenue going up budgetarily from year to year, percentage-wise in expenses,
It's already in there.
it's already built into the documents.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, the 1.5 million debt service, weren't there projects that you guys sought budget amendments for? I thought there was something about like the court view software enhancements, and we didn't approve the budget amendment, but we approved the purchase. Weren't there a couple of those?
Yeah, what we did, and so what, mechanically within the system, we're making this budget adjustment to reduce the expenses by $1.5 million, and we're gonna increase the transfer out to the capital projects fund by the total of all those projects. So the net is, I think we've got $7.8 million of projects that were approved this year. And
Okay, so you're transferring, you're adding this budget amendment. We've already agreed to those
Approved all
purchases.
those other
So shouldn't
contracts.
those budget amendments be in front of us as well?
I could have done this as a net. This is gonna be a move, and the other move will increase the expenses. I've already done that. probably not explaining it clearly enough. This could have been a net.
Okay,
If you look at it, the total transfer out for the year is gonna be about $8.5 million, 8 to 8.5. For capital projects.
okay.
And as you recall, what we originally put in the budget was, $1.5 million for the debt service, and we had originally asked for $7 million.
Well, and
In
some of
transfer,
them
so
I
8.5
thought that we
total.
had actually already done budget amendments on, but some of them I thought we had not yet done budget amendments on, and that those were outstanding. That's why I was wondering why you were moving the 1.5. Does that make sense to you?
I understand what you're saying, we're gonna make it into, this moves the $1.5 million, then I can move the other money out from here.
Okay.
I mean,
All right, I don't see any other speakers. Does anyone else? All right, please vote. Motion passes 11-0. Item G, agreement momentum friend of the court scheduling application. And I don't see Jaco. So, he was here? All right, is there, well, is there a motion to, this gets moved to tomorrow night, correct? Yes, so there's a motion to move to tomorrow night. Moved by Brown, supported by Romano. Commissioner Carabelli.
Madam Chair, I'm not gonna belabor this, but really quick. I don't know when we're gonna start this, but Crystal, I really think that we need to ask the department heads, or maybe you're in the process of doing it, or some math that has to be done by us. But when I turn around and I look at a contract like the friend of the court one, where it's $42,000 and it's $12,000 a year for their maintenance thing, I wanna see the life expectancy of whatever we're buying. And if it's a 10-year, well, now it's 120,000 plus the 43, you're $168,000 into whatever you're buying. So I think that's so important for us to have a bigger picture of making these decisions. And again, it's not coming on you, but if we need to request that, I think it's important to get true costs of what this stuff is gonna be.
It's on the form, they'll have to start completing.
Is that what it, okay. All right, thank you, sorry, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, right, there was a motion, that was a motion by Duje and supported by no, I thought it was Romano. Romano. Okay, Romano. Okay, I don't have any other speakers, please vote. Item passes 11-0. Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee recommendations, item A and B. Moved by Myjack, is there support? Support by Lucido. No, we're not doing 9 yet. Please vote. Oh, thank you. Okay, item passes 11-0. Justice and Public Safety, I'm pulling out item C to be voted on separately. Are there any others that any commissioners want to be voted on separately? Okay, so motion to approve A through N minus C. Moved by Myjack, supported by Gillette. Any questions? Please vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to?
Hey,
I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, when are we gonna say, until we see a study before we renew any of these contracts, that we're getting true costs back? Are we gonna say that the next time they come up? I'm just asking, these are contracts with the community, do we know that the inflate?
Well, you don't trust the sheriff, I guess.
It's nothing about trust, Commissioner, it's about, are we actually covering the cost, and the general fund isn't picking up the difference for these communities?
I agree, we have to bring them in and go through a line item, look at each.
I'd like to
do that.
put them in notice before they come up again, saying, we wanna have a full study from finance, of saying our true costs.
Well, next year's gonna be a different year doing the budget than it was this past year, I
Okay.
guarantee you that.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Given what we went through.
Okay, all right, no, no, that's, I mean, he says that, but you want to see it listed out. We'll let Steve know that we would like to see an actual analysis of how they're coming up with, that it does cover it, is what you're saying. Okay, all right, thank you. Please vote. Everything but C. Motion passes 11-0. Item C, contract Correct Care Solutions. Is there a motion? Moved by Brown. Is there support? Support by Duge. Any questions? Please vote. Okay, item passes 9-2 with Commissioners Toko and Kleinfeld voting against. Item D, correspondence, Treasurer's Office, second and third quarterly reports. Is there a motion? Moved by Brown, support? Support by Sager. Well, I know now Don said you don't even need to come up here, but are there any other commissioners that have any questions?
Well, did they prepare a presentation, or, I mean, if,
I just
well, but if
wanted
they
to
want to
take a
say
moment.
something, I want to hear
It's
them.
just under
Yeah.
correspondence, that's why. No, you're right, right, it's under
Just
correspondence.
real brief, I just wanted to make sure that if I had not done so already, you were aware that Christina Miller is our new investment officer in the treasurer's office. You'll see her again presenting the quarterly reports, and that was why the second quarter report was delayed, the transition from our old investment officer to the new one. So I just wanted to make sure that the commissioners were aware of that, and from our point of view, we want to make sure you get the quarterly reports on a timely basis.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, please vote. No, that's okay. Commissioner, if motion passes 11-0. Oh, new business, Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Joe. I don't know, item we already discussed. I just have a quick question. Essentially, is the only reason why we don't let people use credit cards to pay, is it simply because you feel that that they're not going to be responsible enough?
It's not that first of all,
I mean, if they're going to pay
the
the 2.5%.
The fundamental issue is this. The fundamental issue is this. We have a tax reversion, delinquent tax reversion fund that's been crafted in a certain way in this county that makes it very distinct than Oakland or Wayne County. And we have concerns about what it would mean to the DTR fund if we allowed people to pay with credit cards.
What might it mean? They want to pay their credit card, the credit card comes going to pay us.
Can I clarify? His position is if it's a hardship to pay it, then the high percentage rates of credit cards is going to make it an even harder hardship.
I'm asking if that's his only concern.
I
It may well
believe
be,
it.
or if there's a
That's-
concern to the county.
That's our main concern.
That's your main concern.
And that's why we're looking to get more information from the public, because maybe it does make sense for the first year it's delinquent for us to allow credit card payments. But we want to gather more information from the public
Okay.
to try to make an educated guess
Right.
how this would impact collections.
Yeah, I just want to know if that was the main concern, or if there was some other concerns involving something else beyond them having an additional burden of having to make the high, interest rates and so forth. But
It's certainly a primary concern, and we're concerned of how it would negatively impact the DTR fund.
okay, I'll follow up with you on the negative impact of the DTR fund at a different time.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillette. Does anyone else have anything for new business? Okay, moving on to public participation. Does anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Oh, we had a receive and file there. Did we vote on it? Oh, that's right. Motion to adjourn by Duge, supported by Gillette. Please vote.